That's all right.
Welcome to the next episode of the Iowa Girls Wrestling Stories podcast. Today, I have someone that is trying to break into sports media, going to school. Actually, just found out he's also a girls wrestling coach. Jacob Hollywood Worthen. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Troy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, this will be a lot of fun. Like I said, probably not my average guest, but I thought it was kind of cool that you're breaking into sports media. I'm doing it kind of as a hobby, so I thought we'd talk a little bit about that and just your journey. But then you said you've been coaching at Benton. Uh, how do you like coaching girls and maybe some differences between coaching boys and girls? Because I'm sure you did a little bit of that too.
Yeah, I actually, when I was in the Navy, I coached a year of boys wrestling out in Washington State at Oak Harbor High School, which was very fun. It was definitely a bit of a learning experience for me. Bit of a culture shock too out in Washington because, coming from Iowa, we eat, sleep, and breathe wrestling for the most part. And out there, it's like, okay, there's some people who are, most of the team is just this is their first year wrestling. Coaching girls has been absolutely amazing. It's taught me a different level of patience than I learned with the boys, but it's also opened my eyes to like different ways of coaching because I always thought that because I wrestled under uh, Bart Mailer, whose style of wrestling and style of coaching is very old school, which I
Yep.
like. But sometimes the old school approach doesn't really go well when you're coaching girls. So it's fun to take a step back, and I've really been just somebody that a lot of the girls like having around. I are just a few weeks ago we went to support one of my wife's friends. Her little sister was going to prom, so we went and saw her do like her walkout and all that, and then not that much long afterwards, three of the girls I coached came around like a corner of a hallway and their faces just lit up and they're like, Coach Worthen. I'm like, hi everyone. And they love having me. I love being a coach. It's definitely something that was an avenue I was exploring looking into school. I mean, obviously I chose a different path with sports media, but uh, I've always wanted to give back to wrestling, and whether that's through coaching or doing what I do now, I'm just happy to give back.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Did you ever have to coach against your sister?
Yes, it was my first year at Benton. She faced Amanda Schnorr at Prairie, and as a volunteer coach, one of the things my head coach Josh Heck, which big thanks to him for giving me the opportunity to do this stuff, was he said I don't have to if I don't want to, but I wanted to make it a point to the girls on the team that just because, yeah, you know my sister and that's my sister, I'm not in her corner. I'm here for y'all. And Jillian did what Jillian does and
Yeah.
pinned her in, but it was definitely a chance to prove myself to the girls that I coach that I'm not here just to, maybe see my sister wrestle. I'm here to help y'all get better. And if I can coach you to beat my sister, then great, but obviously that's easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a harder task than than that. No, that's cool that you stepped in, you're doing that. I think coaching is probably one of the greatest experiences. Now, on the second hand of that, I think the sports media, not that I'm good at it or anything, but I'm really enjoying just dipping my toe into it so I can see where you'd like to do that too. I really wanted to talk about the NCAA tournament and how you got into that, everything that went into doing that, and then some of the things that happened. So, first of all, how did you even think about going down there and being at the NCAA tournament?
So it was kind of just a fluke thing. I being a student at Iowa, I met a guy he's the sports director for the student radio down at Iowa, KRUI, and I reached out to him about wanting to get on calls for wrestling and whatnot. Excuse me. And in turn, like I would see if he wanted to do the podcast with me that I do, Pin to Win podcast. If make sure I plug
Yeah.
that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
uh, And then it kind of just blossomed. We did an interview with Gabe Arnold. We called the Cyhawk Duel, which was my first uh, duel that I got to call for KRUI, which was amazing. We called the Oklahoma State duel together, the Ohio State duel. Uh, I wasn't there for the Nebraska duel, although I would have loved to have been because that comeback would have been absolutely amazing to be on call for. But we had girls' finals that night, and as a coach, I wanted to be there to watch my girls get their
Oh yeah.
placements. Uh, and he told me just out of the blue, like, "Hey, I sent a media request off to the NCAA for nationals." I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "What made you decide you wanted to do that?" I was like, "He's like, worst they can say is no, right?" I'm like, "Okay." And then a couple weeks after that, we got an email from David Lentz saying that our media credentials have been approved. And I was like, "Oh, I guess we're going to Philly."
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really cool. I loved watching the interviews. Um, what was the environment? I mean, this year that it was a pretty exciting. The finals were incredible, but what was the whole environment of the tournament like? I've never actually been to the NCAAs, so I just
The last one I went to, I went as a fan, and that was when it was in Des Moines when Kyle Dake won his fourth. And I was just a kid. I mean, but still that atmosphere was great. The atmosphere for me walking in, media, I'm a member of the media now. I'm not a fan. It was it was a very unique experience. It was one of those moments where I was like, okay, this is definitely one of those moments that I need to bookmark in my head because this is a stepping stone on where I want to get to. The atmosphere was incredible. All 3 days were just amazing. I mean, I was there the day before for the pre-tournament press conference, which was also very fun, but that finals atmosphere was just, it was peach perfect. And having, the president there, that was amazing too, because beforehand, I mean, we don't really get presidents at nationals, which was him coming in. Obviously, everyone's going to have their own opinions. I'm not,
yeah.
no need to get into that, but it was still cool. And then when Wyatt Hendrickson won that, I mean, the TVs don't do it justice. Well, that Wells Fargo Center was loud and booming when he got that takedown on Gable. No greater atmosphere I've been in personally for a wrestling match.
Oh, I can only imagine that the being there in person would be just insane. Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, and like you said, we don't need to go into anybody's political, beliefs or anything, but just having our that many eyes more on wrestling that maybe didn't watch before. Even if it's in a press clipping. Wow, there's NCAA tournament. There's that there. So that it just brings something more to the sport. What were some of the most fun interviews you did, or the big names, or maybe there was somebody that really stood out?
For me, the first one was Tony Ramos of North Carolina. Uh, he was the first person I interviewed at the tournament. Really cool dude. My brother and I used to do one-on-ones with Tony when we were little. My dad would pay for Tony to come up and we would
Uh-huh.
do one-on-ones with Tony. So that was very special to be able to do that interview. And then AJ Ferrari was a big one. I didn't even think, excuse me, I would get to interview AJ. And then when I did, the day before wrestling started, it popped off on my TikTok. That video alone has me over at least 52,000 views on my TikTok.
Wow.
And oh yeah, just immediately like popped off. Everyone kept asking for updates throughout the weekend after that video, and obviously that's what I did. And then I think the one that I will remember the most and take with me was Daniel Cormier because I was sitting, being media. I was also there to try to take pictures and do stuff for KRUI's social media. But if you don't have a photographer pass, you can't sit down mat side. So I found a seat in the stands that I kind of designated my spot for the 3 days. And I sat there and DC walked by and started talking with uh, Bono from Wisconsin. And I was like, there's a potential interview I could get. I'm like, yeah, yeah, let's go interview DC. And I asked him if I could interview him, and he's like, yeah, just let me finish talking with my friends. I was like, yeah, no problem. And I met a few guys who were from the Penn State campus. They did student media at Penn State, who I became friends with. Yes, Iowa and Penn State can coexist and get along. Me and my friends are shining examples of that. Uh, but I'm sitting there, and then the nerves start to hit me. I wasn't nervous like at all prior to anything, even interviewing Ferrari and Barry Davis and all the coaches I interviewed, even Metcalf and Schwab. No nerves. But now I'm sitting there waiting to interview DC, and then the nerves start hitting me like, oh my God, you're about to interview a UFC heavyweight champion, a UFC Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
But then once I pressed record and I started asking questions and started talking, all those nerves went away. And it seemed like DC got quite a kick out of the Hollywood nickname, which I loved. But that one's gonna stick with me for the longest time, especially considering my little brother Hunter is now pursuing a career in MMA. So
Yeah, that's really cool that he's doing that too. I know your family, I know your dad. I don't know the boys as well as I know Jillian and your dad, but I definitely follow what you guys are doing. That's really cool. Um, yeah, the big interviews. I could only imagine. I'm just starting to do some in-person interviews, just at some tournaments and I kind of helping Tony out in that fact because he never has anybody to do interviews. So how do you come? I mean, do you research, or is that just on the fly that you're coming up with your questions, or obviously Comey, you had no idea he was going to be there, walking by, and you get that interview. How do you come up with the questions for it? Just
it's a little bit of research. If there's people I know I want to interview, I do research a little bit of questions to ask and make sure I get, good questions. You don't want to just go in all willy-nilly and potentially throw out something that could be labeled as a bad question or you stutter along. With DCU is kind of a little easier to be on the fly with it. Uh, DC was the only one I interviewed that was kind of was more than likely on the fly with my questions. I know he's a high school wrestling coach, so I wanted to ask him about that. There was a UFC rule implemented that I wanted to ask him about as well that I already knew about. And then I wanted to ask him because he is a good uh I'm trying to find the word. He's a good ambassador for the sport of wrestling. And I wanted to ask him is the same question I ask all wrestlers who I see doing things for the sport. What's it like to give back to the sport that you love so much? That's one of my main questions I always ask people who I know fell in love with wrestling, who used it at the highest levels. And so with DC, it was on the fly, ready to go. Other than that, I definitely tried to research as much as I can. Uh, Always want to be an informed interviewee or journalist, actually.
oh, very nice. Um, how did the Hollywood come up? How did you the persona there? Let's learn a little bit about that.
So my wife one year for Christmas bought me a pair of the Edith sunglasses from Spider-Man No Way Home, like the Tony Stark glasses.
Yeah.
And I started wearing them around Carver when I started doing the radio broadcasting. And Andy Hamilton from Flow actually coined the Hollywood term. He's like, uh, "Hey, what's up, Hollywood?" And because he just he says I give off a Hollywood vibe whenever I have those glasses on, and so I kind of ran with it. Which I mean, I love. I'm also a pro wrestling guy, and I'm a big fan
Uh-huh.
of the old faction, the NWO with Hollywood Hogan. So I kind of it works out well for me because being a fan of that stuff as well, I can just run with it. I have fun with it, and I don't really consider myself like a Hollywood kind of personality, but I will run with a persona if it's given to me by a guy
Oh,
from Flow.
oh, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Well, your family's kind of known for having those little names anyway. You got Monster and Muffin Top, and so yeah, I wasn't sure if Dad had given you that at some point in time, but that's really cool. That came from Flow. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
So what sparked your interest, in wrestling media, sports media?
Ever since I was a kid, I've always loved sports. As you can see, I got a ESPN sign
Yeah.
behind me. Big fan of ESPN, always been a big fan of ESPN. I would spend all my mornings watch before school watching Sports Center and every Saturday in the fall watching College Game Day, listening to them. I still do it now even as an adult because that's that's one of the places I want to be. So I want to hear what they talk about and what nuances, mannerisms they have that could make me a better journalist or a better analyst in front of a camera. I realized early on I wasn't necessarily blessed with the genetics to be on Sports Center as a pro athlete, and which is fine. I mean, it's not for everybody, and I get that, but something clicked in me at a young age, like, well, I could be the guy talking about these people making plays, knowing what I'm talking about. And that kind of start piqued my interest in sports media. And all I've ever wanted to do was sports media. And my dad used to buy me sports almanacs with all these statistics dating years and years back. And I used to read them like books, memorizing these statistics and plugging them in wherever. And that's kind of where it went in. When I was in the Navy and I was getting out, I had to talk with my wife about what I really wanted to do, and I had my two paths, either coaching wrestling, which I really love to do, and like being a history teacher so I can be through the school because I do love history, or I can pursue this dream I've had since I was a kid. Ultimately, I wanted to pursue this dream I've had since I was a kid. And it's gone really well for me so far. I've met with lots of people, I've made lots of connections, and I'm on the right track so far.
Very cool. You said you got to do the inter or not interviews, but you got to do the call at Carver Hawkeye and with a lot of those duels. Um, what's, being a sports person, I love sports too, obviously, but making the call in wrestling, how is it different maybe than other sports? It's more intricate sports. There's a lot of details in what's going on, hand fighting, especially at the college level. What's been interesting about learning how to do the call on wrestling?
It's been interesting it's been more interesting to learn the nuances of having a role, whether that's play by play or color commentator. Being down at Iowa, I've been able to do play by play and color commentary for Big Ten Plus for some Iowa baseball and some Iowa softball games as well, getting some experience in there. And now I do racing announcing on Sundays, which I'll actually be going to after this. But with wrestling, I bring the same passion to the calls that I brought out onto the mat or I bring into my coaching. For me, wrestling, I know a lot of people say wrestling is kind of a niche sport and it's niche. Not a lot of people, seem to care about it, but to me, wrestling's everything. And I want to give back as much, if not more, than what wrestling has given me. So when it comes to those broadcast calls, I'm always making sure I'm not talking over my buddy or my partner, and then I'm making sure I have those energetic calls because Shane Sparks does an absolute amazing job at it, and
Yeah.
I want to emulate Shane as much as I can. But at the end of the day, I also still want to be me.
Well, you're fun to listen to and you're fun to watch. So that's really, I can see that being definitely a long time career for you. What are some essentials that you have to have, breaking into sports media? I mean, what is something that you could tell people that are interested in it? What do you need to do?
Ultimately, at the end of the day, be you. It's one of the biggest things I've been taught by my professors down at Iowa. One of my professors was actually at ESPN for 23 years. His name was Wayne Drays, and is Wayne Drays, and he actually got me in contact with Andy Hamilton at Flow because I took one of his classes in the fall, uh, and he has these guest speakers come in, and we were talking about wrestling one week, and he brought Andy in to kind of talk about Gable and Iowa wrestling and Iowa State and Cale Sanderson and now Penn State. And the biggest piece of advice is be authentic. While you might have an idea of what they might be looking for, like with whether it's your Kirk Herbstreits, your Chris Fowlers, or whoever, at the end of the day, you just need to be you. And then I think the other thing I would say is have the confidence in your abilities to convey good stories and your passion to network and meet people. I know it can be scary to kind of talk to people. I met with Rock Harrison and Sean Kenny and Quint Kesnick at nationals, and I was like, I grew up listening to these guys for the most part, and this is new to me. These are the guys I want to be like. But I had enough confidence in my abilities to reach out to Rock, to reach out to Quint, to reach out to Sean, be like, hey, if you have a moment at nationals, I would love to pick your brain a little bit. I'm somewhat new, trying to get in to this big, big world of sports media. Like, what advice could you give me? Just be authentic, be yourself, and have confidence in your abilities.
Very good. As far as mentors, you kind of talked about your professors a little bit, but is there somebody that you like when you saw them being a sports announcer that you said, "Hey, that's who I want to be. That's who I want to do." We have that in sports all the time. I want to be this person. I want to emulate them.
Off the top of my mind, I honestly don't know. I mean, every Saturdays I love listening to Lee Corso, and I know he's going to be retiring this year, and that's going to suck because I grew up listening to Lee, and I always loved Lee. But as far as individual announcers go, I don't know if I've had just one that would be like the one that made me fall in love with what I want to do. I take pieces from wherever I hear it. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Joe Buck, I love his call at the end of the 2016 World Series, being a Cubs fan. Uh, I listen to Aikman, I listen to Brady, I go back and listen to some of John Madden. I try to find areas where I feel like I might need to improve on, and I try to seek out clips and examples from people who've come before me to try to mix into my own stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it's just like anything else. If you want to be good at it, you got to research it. You got to, invest into it. One of the things that's really come on, I mean, obviously, social media is huge. You can almost make your own way in social media. And now, um, what have you done to help develop the social media end of your broadcast career?
It just goes into making clips, putting the information out that fans might not know about. With nationals, not everybody's watching, the consolation side. So I was giving updates on the backside and placement matches. Uh, I do the social media for my podcast as well, because through Andy and through Wayne, I found ways to the biggest piece of advice was you can start your own podcast wherever, like you did, like I did, and you just have to cultivate a following and build it. So I did that, did the socials. I keep doing the socials as much as I can. I'm always reaching out, plugging stuff on LinkedIn, plugging stuff on not Netflix, X, TikTok, Facebook, wherever I can, just that way, my name gets out there.
Yeah, no, yeah, and um, you said you have a professional studio at Iowa, to sit down and do everything with, which is really very, very cool. But starting out a podcast, it is kind of, I don't know, it's fun, it's and stuff, but there's a lot of work that goes into it that people probably don't see. What are some of the challenges you've had with starting a podcast and doing that alongside everything else you do?
I think the biggest challenge is coming up with a design concept of what I want the podcast to be. With Pin to Win, I knew I wanted to talk about wrestling. And with that, I found something I wanted to talk about and I'm passionate about. Now, how can I build around that? And then it starts to, okay, where am I going to stream? How am I going to do it? How can I market this, like with logos and branding and all that? And then I can't just talk about it alone. Who else has a similar interest that I could talk to? Because I can't just be talking to myself on dead space. That's not going to be fun for anybody. I need somebody to bounce off of. And that's the challenge I'm coming into now is because I've been wanting to try to start a new podcast, more all around sport oriented instead of just focused on one. And I have the name, I have the logo. Now it's just trying to find people to talk about it with.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the audio editing. That was the biggest hurdle I had to jump because coming into this, I had no experience editing audio, doing graphics, visuals, any of that knowledge. So learning Premiere Pro definitely helped me out a lot in getting like the clips I post and everything else. I would say those are been the biggest challenges, finding people to that have similar interests that you can talk about it with, and then getting knowledge on editing the audio and video if you have it. As far as just getting started goes, my first episode was recorded on my phone with a voice memo. You can
Nice.
all you got to do is that's really all you need. You, a buddy, and just your phone, and you can get started that easily.
Yeah, that's these are things I'm trying to learn also as I'm going. I don't do a lot of editing, I might clip something out and stuff, but I found some ways to cheat the system. There's some really good AI programs out there that you can just put your video into and it'll throw your clips out, so that helps me out. But then I don't always get the control of what I want and things like that. As far as editing, I don't really have to because I do everything via Zoom. So Zoom does it all for me. Other than as long as I'm just hitting record and sending it out on the platforms, that's really cool. It's easy, but it's something I do want to learn more about is the editing, and I'm trying to work with that. Where do you think your future lies in sports media? Where do you want to go?
To the top. Ultimately, to the top. I'm not ultimately the road. My path in life has never been on the straight and narrow. It's always been twisty turvy, multiple curves, like with anybody else in life. I mean, right out of high school, I didn't have the grades to go to college right away like I wanted to. So I spent 6 years in the United States Navy, and now I got out. I initially got rejected by Iowa, uh, where I had always wanted to go to school ever since I was a kid. And then, so I took another detour, did 2 semesters at Kirkwood, then got accepted into Iowa. So I know it's never going to be straight and narrow. I know it's never going to be easy, and I have to take those bumps in the road as they come. But ultimately, I want to be at the top of my profession. I want to be the guy that people come to. I want to be like the Stephen A. Smith, whether it be of wrestling, which I would love being the Stephen A. Smith of wrestling.
Yeah,
I also love football. I love hockey. I love racing. I'm starting to get into basketball because I have to be well versed in all areas. Uh, but ultimately, I want to be at the top, and whether that's at the Big Ten Network or ESPN or Fox Sports or Barstool or wherever I might end up. I just want to be at the top of my profession. I want to be one of the ones that people are like, yeah, I want to be like that guy.
very cool. What advice would you give others? If there's somebody, I always talk about, hey, giving back to the sport of wrestling and being a coach, being an official, being a fan, those things later on in life. But this is also another way to give back and pursue something within wrestling. What advice would you give anyone that wants to do something in wrestling media, sports media, any of that?
The best advice I would give is just look for your opportunities. They're not always going to present themselves to you. You got to be able to reach out to others. I did something similarly with Flo as of late. I reached out to Andy and asked if there was any opportunities to be a broadcaster on one of their events. And obviously in the summer right now, there's not that much. But when things get back into things, I have a connection at Flo that knows like, hey, this guy wants some experience. It's all about reaching out the best you can. And if sports media is not the way you want, like you said, definitely go out, be an official. We definitely need more of them out there for this sport. Being just a good ambassador, I feel like for any sport, whether it's wrestling, I know we're on a wrestling podcast right now, but
Yep,
if you're passionate about football, do that for football. If you're passionate about hockey, do that for hockey.
very good. So half of my podcast is always about getting to know somebody just a little bit better on some different things. Some are wrestling questions, some are just off the wall things. So this is what I'd like to do now is kind of switch to that, and we'll go with we'll start with this one. Do you have any pets?
Yes, my wife and I have a dog. Her name is Scout. She is a Lab Husky and Australian Shepherd mix. The color of her fur has been quoted by the vet to be that of a toasted marshmallow. We also have 3 cats, Garfield, Cracker, and Sissy.
Wow, you got all kinds of animals running around. If you could have any pet, domestic or exotic, what pet would that be?
I've always wanted a snake. My wife's not too big a fan of snakes, which I respect. But if I could have a pet, I've always wanted a snake, at least once in my life.
What kind of snake would you like?
Non-venomous. I don't know. I don't know what types of snake, just non-venomous.
Gotcha. Uh, Best wrestling shoe?
I'd have to say Asics.
Asics. Are you Asics guy forever, you think?
Not forever. If there's a wrestling shoe that I like, I'll wear it. And like if it my if it supports my ankles the best because I have kind of shoddy ankles, then
Uh,
it doesn't matter if it's Asics or Rudis or whatever have you, I'll wear it.
Gotcha. As wrestlers, we've all had to, maybe cut a pound or two in our lifetime. What are you gonna if you weigh in, let's say it's an AAU event where you only have to weigh in one time, where are we gonna go out to eat and what are you gonna have?
Ooh, depends on the place. If we're in Des Moines, probably gonna go to Jethro's and get some brisket.
Yeah, that's definitely every time I'm in Des Moines, I think we stop at Jethro's if it's for the weekend, I'm there at least one time. So yeah, good choice. Very good choice. Obviously sports media can be a big travel. You might do a lot of traveling in your life, but on your own, your wife and you, is there some place that you guys would maybe like to go?
We've talked about going back to Las Vegas. We went out there for my wife's 21st birthday, which was very fun. We've definitely talked about going down to Orlando, Florida, or Florida in general. We're a couple race fans as well, so we kind of want to go to Daytona to watch the race. My wife loves Disney and Stitch, so I told her we could probably go to Disney and she can see Stitch, or she can go out and swim with dolphins or whatever have you. So I think Florida probably right now.
Yeah, I both of those places. My brother taught school in Las Vegas when I was in college, so I spent
Oh,
a lot of time in Las Vegas and really love that place. It's actually you can just walk around and people watch and see all kinds of cool stuff. You don't even have to like gambling. But
oh,
then
it's so
Florida, I absolutely love Florida also. Um, Here's a coaching question for you. It's second period. Uh, what's the choice?
depends on what the score is and depends on how comfortable we are in the positions.
Ah, there's a good coaching answer. The old school thought was there was no choice. It's always down. So I'm seeing that with new coaches. Myself, I've actually evolved a little bit on that answer too. Um, Go back to your wrestling career. What was your go-to takedown?
I was a big fan of the blast double.
Nice. You're on top pinning. What's your favorite pinning combination?
Double bar arm. I like the idea of a move that can inflict a little pain and also stack them up at the same time.
Very nice. Yeah, that there might be your WWE influence there, huh? And off the bottom, how you getting away or getting a reversal?
Uh, switch first. If switch isn't there, I go to a stand up.
Yeah, I think we wrestle similar styles. Um, I talk a lot about this also as pre-match ritual and how you would get ready for a match. Is there something that you did every time that you almost was like, I have to do this or I'm not gonna be able to wrestle right? Or is there something that you did?
Uh, I had a combination of two things prior to every match I went out and wrestled. One would be a playlist that I kind of made and picked up from all the songs I used to listen to with my dad, like classic rock songs. So I'd always be listening to like AC/DC, Ozzy, Metallica before every match. And then about two to three matches before I knew I would be up, I'd step out into a hallway and I would pray.
Very nice. Yeah, that's again a lot of similarities there. Next question was going to ask about music and what your favorite types of music are. Classic rock. Well, now it's classic rock. That's just what your dad and I grew up with, right?
Mhm.
But uh, any other genres of music you like, or any types of music that you really like?
I'm a big country fan, and it's kind of fitting because when I was in the Navy, being from Iowa, a lot of people when I was smaller in stature. People used to call me wheat thins, which I thought was funny. And then as I got bigger, because I like food and I come from a family of big men, they started calling me Big Country, kind of like Roy Nelson. But I like for now classic rock, and I like country music.
Very good. Uh, you said your wife's a huge fan of Disney and Stitch. Do you have a favorite Disney movie?
Atlantis,
Atlanta.
to me it's very underrated, but I love Atlantis.
That is a good one. So here's a new question I've kind of been throwing out there. If you could wrestle any Disney character, who would that be and why?
It's a good question. I don't want to pick somebody too weak, but I also don't want to pick somebody too strong. You know what? Because I think this would get a lot of funny reactions. I think me wrestling Pumbaa would be a good match.
Oh yeah, that would be an awesome match. Very good. Um, TV shows. Do you binge any TV shows right now?
I'm a big fan. My wife and I are big fans of paranormal, so we watch Ghost Adventures together a lot. We've also been watching a lot of Dexter, but more often than not, whenever I want to like just kick back, relax, I'll always turn on South Park.
South Park's a go-to for me too. Is there someone in wrestling that has inspired you, whether that's a world team member or just maybe even a teammate at some point in time?
This might sound a little corny, but it'd probably be my dad, my brother, and my sister as wrestlers. They definitely made me want to be better than what I could have been or than what I was. Uh, my dad always was instilling, uh, one of the biggest things I'll always thank my dad for was instilling a love for wrestling in me rather than just a need to win. And I know my dad will always pride himself on that. And then the self-confidence he helped me out a lot with because there was times when I was little where I wasn't I wasn't popular, I wasn't big, I was actually really small, and people use that against me a lot, but my dad taught me and gave me a lot of self-confidence in myself that I'll always take forward, and I hope I instill in my own wrestlers.
Yeah, that's really good. Your dad, yeah, your dad's fun to be around. He's always got a good insight on things. I only imagine that he was pretty good giving advice growing up through wrestling. Yeah, that's good. Um, I had some really good coaches. You've had some amazing coaches. You're still around amazing coaches at Benton. Is there something that some coaches said? I think of this all the time, and especially in situations like, oh my God, my high school coach said that, or oh, my college coach said that. Is there something that pops up in your head when you're coaching, or just in everyday life, something that you can remember your coaches saying?
It was usually a lot of if you don't get out from underneath, you're going to be running sprints. If you don't get out, if you don't get out, you're gonna run till you puke, kind of thing.
It, is there something is there something now as a coach that you've been saying maybe that over and over? Repetition, obviously, in coaching makes a difference. Is there something you tell your kids all the time?
Yeah, there's quite a few things. I'll use the funny one first because the girls I coach absolutely love to hear it whenever I say it. Uh, when they get nervous before a match, I'll try to like make them laugh, and I always say, "Hey, you don't have to believe in yourself. Just believe in me who believes in you." Uh, and they love that. As far as like actual uh advice goes, it's something I learned from Nick Perler's book is that losses are going to happen in this sport. You know, we don't like them, but you can't dwell on them. Focus on what you did right. Dwell on that. Accept, deal with the loss accordingly, but don't dwell on it because that's not how you're going to get better. And then uh, one of the things I heard from my dad and coaches, and something I also say is you're never there's winners and there's learners. You're only a loser if you refuse to learn. And I think a lot of the girls I coach like that as well.
Yeah, and the idea that we seek out some losses in order to learn, if we're winning all the time, it's tough to get better. I think you need to get better. So yeah, good advice. If you had any superpower, what would it be?
I got to ask this just the other day too. I'd have to say super strength.
Super strength.
Hmm.
A good one. So that let's go into the ring here because of course you like WWE, and I'm just throwing this one off the fly. What's going to be our signature move in the WWE?
Mm, that's a tough one because there's three moves I really like, and two are from my two favorites, and another one is just because the guy's a beast. I'm gonna have to go with the F5 from Minnesota, the 2000 heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, of course, girls wrestle folk or freestyle in college, and there's always going to be that debate, freestyle, folk style, modified. Um, what do you think? What's your favorite style of everything? And you can throw Greco in there too.
My favorite one to wrestle is free folk style. My favorite one to coach is also folk style. My favorite one to watch is Greco. I'm a huge fan of the Greco-Roman power bombs I always see on YouTube all the time. Like there's just some sort of beautiful violence to it. And that's something I coin a lot when I'm on my podcast or talking about wrestling is like it's beautiful violence, much like the gladiators of ancient Rome. Uh, but yeah, favorite one to wrestle and coach is folk style. Favorite one to watch, definitely Greco-Roman.
Greco has a lot of intricate things to it that the casual fan really doesn't catch. You got to watch Greco a long time to really pick up on a lot of those things because the matches, they're not super high scoring, but there's so much good stuff in Greco that we can use in either folk or free. So that's definitely a good style to learn and watch and emulate. Um, Gratitude's a super important thing in life, right? If we're grateful for things, we really can't have bad days. Is there something every day that you wake up and you're grateful for?
Life itself. I've been I've been extremely blessed to have the opportunities that I've gotten. Every morning is a blessing. Uh, Getting to wake up next to, my best friend and the woman I love is also a blessing. Going to bed every night with her is a blessing as well. I'm just I'm always so grateful for what God has given me and the opportunities God has given me. He's really shown me that there's especially in times where I didn't think I might have had, you know, a sense of purpose in life. God definitely helped show me the way, and now I'm well on my way to doing what I love to do and having purpose behind it.
Awesome. So I just gave you a new position. You're now the head of the NFHS, and you're sitting on the rules committee, and they've given you complete autonomy. You can change any rule or make any rule in wrestling. What are you going to do?
That's really tough to think about, actually. I haven't put too much thought into the rules. I kind of like them how they are now with the 3-point takedown and the back points and
Mhm.
the 1 point of contact. I honestly don't know if I would change anything as it currently stands.
Oh, that's definitely an opinion you can have. And that's okay. I've kind of come to the end of everything that I've had to ask. I always leave a little bit of time for final thoughts and anything that you want to, say or anything. But I really have appreciated this. It's fun to see a different perspective. I think it shows that maybe there's more to just, our sport and sports in general is, obviously athletes, coaches, officials. But here's just one more thing that you could maybe pursue and if you have interest in. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on. You got any final thoughts for the day?
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity, Troy. I greatly appreciate it. I know you've had my sister on, and I appreciate everything you do with, this podcast and everything you help do for the sport of girls wrestling and wrestling in general in the state of Iowa. just want to say thank you again, probably to my family, my coaches, the coaches I currently work with, all the girls I coach. They mean everything to me, and it's going to be hard to step away from them when, the time comes for me to keep moving on in the sport media world.
Well, very good. Well, again, thank you for coming on. I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop button, but if you want to wait just for a moment.